Guys, welcome to a classic film review of 1953's The Cruel Sea, a World War II Battle of the Atlantic thriller starring Stanley Baker, Jack Hawkins and Denholm Elliot. Now, it follows a crew from the start of the war and goes right the way through with them as they take on German U-boats across the Atlantic, deal with dramas back on shore. The whole thing's shot with an almost documentary-like matter-of-factness. It's immaculately acted and it's a sometimes brutal look at life aboard a British convoy escort. It was the #1 British box office earner in its year of release and remains one of Ealing Studios' crowning achievements. Let's take a look.
Shoot! Her! She's diving, Morel.
So in The Cruel Sea, Commander Ericsson, played by a brilliant Jack Hawkins, is assigned to convoy escort H.M.S. Compass Rose. His officers are either inexperienced men just out of training or, in the case of Stanley Baker's first lieutenant, foul-mouthed slave drivers.
What sort of gun have we got? 4-inch. 4-inch what? Breech loading, quick firing, Mark 4, Mark 6, fixed ammunition?
4-inch. I don't know.
Find out. I'll ask you the next time I see you.
Yes, sir.
I'm the first lieutenant around here. And don't you forget it.
Their job is to protect the ships, helping the war efforts against the Germans, along the way battling U-boats, faulty equipment, and the general horrors of war. Now, what I love about The Cruel Sea, and it's something that may put off more impatient viewers, is that it doesn't necessarily have a typical war movie plot, for the most part anyway. Now, it's very much about showing what life was like aboard a ship and mixes matter-of-fact events in terms of the running of the ship and ultra-tense sequences of U-boat hunting. Using the then still fairly primitive sonar technology.
Have I had an echo like this before? Not exactly, sir. It's about the size you get from a small boat at that range.
A trawler?
Smaller than that, sir.
Sound action stations.
Now, it's also very much a character piece showing the effects of war and prolonged periods at sea have on men. Now, the film was released only 8 years after the end of World War II, during a time when films like this were big business in Britain. The Cruel Sea was a best-selling novel previously by Nicholas Monsarrat, published in 1951, which I'll admit I haven't read, but I do know that the book is divided up into chapters, with each chapter describing a year during the war. Monsarrat himself spent the war years in an anti-submarine escort ship, and so draws on his experiences, and the film greatly benefits from that. Now, what the screenplay does here is kind of follow a similar structure to the book, and what I enjoy is that we aren't strictly confined to the boat. We follow the men on shore leave and get little glimpses into their lives, whether it's Lockhart's blossoming romance with a beautiful Women's Royal Navy service officer, Julie, played by Virginia McKenna, or the glimpse at how the war has destroyed British lives in regular neighbourhoods when it's discovered a sailor has lost a family member as a result of a German bombing. Now, the film's interesting in a couple of ways, and correct me if I'm wrong, but until the finale, I don't think there's a single German in the film. The movie keeps the villains out of the piece, almost totally faceless, and whether it's down to budget or it's an artistic decision, the film never takes us below the surface of the water. A bit like the shark in Jaws, the U-boat's presence is felt only in the crew's tense focus on the sonar screen or the waves themselves. And when they do successfully manage to destroy an enemy sub, we only see the aftermath, oil and debris floating to the surface. And I'm a fan of this. The movie isn't about them, it's about the Royal British Navy and its men. Now, another thing I found interesting about the film is that a young Stanley Baker appears in the majority of the movie's advertising, but truth be told, is actually only in the film for its first quarter, soon to be replaced with Donald Sinden's First Lieutenant Lockhart. And it's his and Jack Hawkins' working relationship that drives the second half of the film, especially in the later parts when the horrors of war begin to take their toll on the captain.
After the war, I'll be as sweet as you like to everybody. Including you. Right now, I'm going back on the square search again. We'll keep at action stations, #1.
Aye, aye, sir.
A chilling sequence where he orders depth charges to be dropped on a U-boat's position, despite the fact British survivors are also in the water, is a pivotal moment that perfectly demonstrates the frustrations of making those kind of life or death decisions.
What's it look like now?
Just the same. It's the firmest contact we've ever had.
There are some chaps in the water just there.
Well, there's a U-boat just underneath them.
Now, The Cruel Sea was directed by Charles Frend, who also directed John Mills in Scott of the Antarctic, and James Mason in Torpedo Bay, both worth checking out. Here he purposefully directs in a matter-of-fact way, splicing stock footage of real battles and explosions into proceedings. Now, along with this, there's some pretty impressive photography of the boat itself, crashing through rough seas and racing through the water to stay one step ahead of the German Navy, the Kriegsmarine. Now, there's an odd sadness to this movie, a non-heroic tone. We see several relationships broken as a result of the war. Denholm Elliot's promiscuous wife side plot being particularly heartbreaking.
Hello, Elaine, darling. Haven't you got rid of that clod of a husband yet? We're all waiting to go off to dinner. Hello. Hello, Elaine.
And by the time a post-shipwreck sequence aboard life rafts bobs onto the screen, you feel as worn out as the barely alive sailors populating it.
No going to sleep there. Come on. Let's go and look at the other lot. The sun will be out soon. That's right. Now paddle.
And in its third act, as an exhausted Jack Hawkins, half freezing but still wild-eyed, is convinced a U-boat is still circling them, despite doubts from his crew, and he's haunted by the screams of dying men during the wreck of his previous ship.
But wait for the word. She's going down! Abandon ship! Abandon ship! Abandon ship!
All of this, coupled with the fact that in his 5 years at sea, Hawkins only manages to sink 2 U-boats, it gives The Cruel Sea a sense of futility that you don't often get in films like this. Now, The Cruel Sea has a well-earned place in the pantheon of great naval battle movies. Run Silent, Run Deep, The Enemy Below, In Which We Serve, and We Dive at Dawn, to quickly name a few. This is a more realistic portrayal of combat, highlighting both the boredom and unfair cruelty of war. Now, although The Cruel Sea doesn't move like a traditional naval adventure movie, there is, of course, still action to be had, complete with depth charge explosions, water bursting through pipes and hull walls.
Cold night, too.
Coco's just coming up, sir.
It's stiff upper lip to a T as well. A nation of gentlemen and women who aren't presented as gung-ho action heroes, just regular people who left behind normal professions to fight and die for their country in dire circumstances. Go check it out.
Now the war doesn't seem to be a matter of feelings anymore. All that finished with Compass Rose. Now it's just a matter of killing the enemy.